بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وبعد. إخواني في الله عز وجل, أخواتي في الله, respected brothers and sisters in Islam. So we continue inshallah ta'ala with the ahkam, the rulings related to the usrah, to the family in Islam. And we were talking here about the rights of a wife in Islam, حقوق الزوجة. And we mentioned some of them, and we stopped at the issue, the situation if one man has more than a wife. لرجل أكثر من زوجة. We said that he has to be just toward them, and one form of justice is that he has to divide the nights equally. Now that tells us about, unfortunately not a common practice, but a practice, something that some men they do. They have 2 or 3 wives in different parts of the world, different countries. So he disappears, he leaves for 6 months, for example, and he leaves one wife by herself, and he goes for 6 months, and he stays with the other wife somewhere else, and he travels and everything. And then he comes back, sees the first wife for 2-3 months, and then he leaves again. Is that accepted in Islam? That's not accepted in Islam. That's haram, that's dhulm. Unless, of course, the other wife, she has accepted, she approves of that. إذا تنازلت عن حقها وقبلت بذلك رضيت. She says it's okay, you can go to the other country, spend 6 months there, and then whenever you have time, come stay with me here for a few months, for a few weeks. Some wives maybe she's not a young lady, right? Maybe she just wants a husband as someone to take care of her financially and so on and so forth. She doesn't really need him to be present all the time. She says it's okay. I'm willing to get married to you, even if you can come only, if you can be with me in my country, for example, for 1 month, 2 months. هذا حقها تنازلت. ولكن by default, because some man, he has a wife, then he wants to marry another wife in another country, he just goes, marries the other wife, and forgets the first one. And the first one, he comes, sees her for a few days, and then disappears again for 6 months. That's not legitimate, that's not accepted in Islam. That is a form of dhulm. فهذا من الظلم عياذا بالله عز وجل. Now if we talk about the rights of a husband in Islam, حقوق الزوج. Number 1, it's the right to be obeyed. حق الطاعة في المعروف. Always, as we said, any person except Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, anyone that we have an obligation to obey them, there are limits for that obedience. الطاعة في المعروف. أولا لا طاعة في معصية الخالق. There is no obedience in the disobedience of Allah Azza wa Jal. So if a husband, he tells his wife that you have to do this, and he tells her to do something haram, that's not accepted. She should not obey him. Also, if the husband, he asks his wife to do something that is really hardship for her, hardship on her, and it's not a necessary thing for her, then also there is no ta'ah here, because إِنَّمَا الطَّاعَةُ فِي الْمَعْرُوفِ. So when we talk about obedience, by the way, this is, for example, we have the ayah in the book of Allah Azza wa Jal, الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم. Overall, by default, there are always situations in life, توجد استثناءات, but the Shara of Allah Azza wa Jal is based on al-a'am al-ghalib, on the majority, on the norm, not on the default. You might have some women who are very strong physically and she's stronger than 10 men, and she has more experience than 10 men. That's an exception. But the default, that's what the Sharia is based on. The default is that men, they have more responsibilities that they can do in terms of leadership, in terms of authority. Who has the right to protect the family? Who has the obligation to protect the family? من يدفع عن أهله? Who has the obligation to defend the family, to protect the family? I'm sorry? The husband, al-ab, the zawj. If there's an intruder at midnight, 1 a.m., there's some noise in the house, the normal reaction and the natural situation should be that the first person to go and see what's going on and to confront the danger is who? Is the husband. If a husband tells his wife, go see who it is, go, I don't know who it is, and go, I'm scared. That's not normal. But that's not, in accordance to the logic. And I guess people nowadays, they tend to forget this natural reality, how Allah Azza wa Jalla has created us. Because for one reason we live overall in a safe country, And because people, they have, this reaction that who protects you is the police, just call 911 if you hear. So it's like the husband, he's not adding anything. He has nothing to offer. When in reality, the responsibility in terms of security, of safety, that's the job of the husband before anyone else. The responsibility to spend, meaning to invest on the family, doesn't matter in Islam. If you say, Wallahi akhi, I have to go borrow money, I have to go work 10 hours, 12 hours in the mountain, in the cold to provide for my family. That's mashallah, amal salih, Allah Azza wa Jalla will reward you for it. But it's your duty, it's your job. You can't complain about it and say, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm quitting this. If you want to quit this, just don't get married. Just don't get married in the first place, don't have a family. So that's why Allah Azza wa Jalla says, because of that, who should be in the position of authority inside the family? It's the man, it's the husband, it's the father. الرجال قوامون على النساء. هل يوجد نظام دولة مؤسسة تسير بلا رأس? Is there any system, any country in the world, any company that works without a leader? There is no authority? Or that has two authorities, like two people, they say we both want to be prime minister, it's gonna be two, let's just make it simple. Or we both want to be the king, two kings. Never happens. There has to be one person. Now that one person is not always about, who has more degrees and who has more experience in life, because family is so present in everyday's life. We cannot make election in every family to say who. So Allah Azza wa Jal made a stable system. Stable system in which there is no conflict. Otherwise there will be conflict from day one. Who should be here the boss? Who should be the leader of this household? So Allah Azza wa Jal made it very clear. This is very clear in Islam. There's no doubt about this. Again, if some people, they are not willing to accept this, they should just know that in reality they just don't want to accept how Islam is. They want to do something else in a different system, that's their own business. But in our system, in our world, in the world of the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, Kitabullah, Sunnatu Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and the ijma', this is the agreed upon stance and value that we have in Islam principle. The leader of the household is the husband. If someone is a leader, what is a leader? A formal leader comes to the right of obedience. They always have this called obey the authority, right? Obey the authority. Why do people understand that they have to listen to what the government says? They have to listen to what police says. If the government says don't go over 60, the speed limit, it's don't go over 60. Why? Because they say, well, they are the authority. Inside the households, it's the same thing. When we say that الرجال قوامون على النساء, husband, he is the authority, he has the right to be obeyed. It is not also as some people might understand. Yes, there are some people who misunderstand this, including many men. They take it to the extreme. He thinks that Allah Azza wa Jal made him the authority and he has the right to be obeyed. It means he's gonna sit on his couch every day, watch his basketball or soccer game or something, and the tea. Where's the tea? Okay, make me fresh bread. Make me a cake quick. That's not the meaning of الرجال قوامون على النساء. Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, he was never like this alayhi salatu wasalam. But it means that sometimes a decision has to be made. When there's a disagreement, decision about something important has to be made, and who has the final say? It is the husband. This is in the book of Allah Azza wa Jal, and this is in the sunnah of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. Of course, Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, he did not tell us to rule by default that the household should be ruled should be governed by orders. That's not the meaning here. The normal current of life is not amr, like receive orders and execute. That's not how Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, he was managing his household. That's why he said alayhi salatu wasalam, خيركم خيركم لأهله وأنا خيركم لأهلي. He said the best of you are those who are the best toward their wives, and I am the best of you toward my wives or toward my family, as he said alayhi salatu wasalam. And he said alayhi salatu wasalam, استوصوا بالنساء خيرا, take great care of women, of your wives. This was the order, the wasiyah of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. And he said alayhi salatu wasalam, أحرج عليكم حق الضعيفين, I insist on you concerning the right of the two weak creations, who are al-yatim wal-mar'ah, the orphans as well as women. And he said also عليه الصلاة والسلام لا يفرق مؤمن مؤمنة إن كره منها خلقا رضي منها آخر. That a mu'min, a believing man, will never hate what? A believing woman, and should never hate his wife if she is a believer, she's a mu'mina. He says عليه الصلاة والسلام, if he dislikes some of her character, he will like something else. So that's why we should not be looking for perfection. Again, one of the main causes, I believe, why there are many problems nowadays, and households get destroyed and everything, is because people, they assume that we can find always, there's always should be something better. They're looking for perfection because they watch TVs and they watch dramas and the Netflix series and stories, so they think that's how life should be. Everything should be perfect, nobody should have imperfection, and then they see that inside the household that's not what they have, so it's going to create some form of, basically they're not satisfied, and then this is going to lead to something else. So again, when Allah Azza wa Jal, He gives to the husband the right to be obeyed, that is not for him to believe I'm the king and I can do whatever I want. It's because he has the responsibility to manage. Because if Allah Azza wa Jal gives you the responsibility, but you don't have the credentials, you don't have, like we tell you, Akhi, you have the responsibility to manage here, how this event works. It's your responsibility. If anything goes wrong, you're responsible for it. That's taklif, responsibility. But then if you realize, you find out, nobody listens to you. Whenever you want to do something, we say, no, you can't, no, we're not doing this. Is this contradiction here? If you have the responsibility, you should have what? Authority that comes from it. You can decide, otherwise we cannot blame you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you as a husband big responsibilities. With that comes also an authority to make sure that you are fulfilling what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you to do. Another right of a husband in Islam is the right to al-jima', istimta', to intimate relationships in the halal. So a wife cannot refuse that to her husband. Again, if she wants to refuse that to her husband, just not get married. That's better, because the point of marriage is again qada'ul haja, is to have that fulfilled within the halal. That's why Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wa salam, he mentioned that if a wife refuses the demand of her husband concerning qada'ul haja, the shahwa, and so on and so forth, and he spends the night upset, unhappy with her, the malaika will be making la'na on her until the morning. This is in Bukhari and in Muslim. Unless, of course, she has an excuse. She's feeling ill, she can't. There's an excuse, there's a udhr, that's an exception. But in normal times, she just wants him to go away, she wants him to suffer, whatever. That's haram, and that's a major sin. That's why the malaika will be making la'na on her. Iyadan billahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why also Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, also many women, they do not know this hukm, but the authentic hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, لا يحل لامرأة أن تصوم وزوجها شاهد إلا بإذنه. It is not halal for a woman to do siyam, to do fasting. Here he's talking about what? Sunnah fasting, not obligation fasting. He's talking about sunnah fasting. No woman should make sunnah fasting in the presence of her husband. If her husband is away, he traveled, it's not a problem. He's not there. So he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, no woman should do her sunnah fasting and her husband, while her husband is there, without his permission. So permission can be either specific to that day, or if she knows that her husband, he doesn't mind. Fast whenever you want, I don't mind. That's hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. Because fasting, what happens? When she fasts, it's possible that she will be what? Weaker, unable to fulfill some of her other obligations, and that's going to have an impact on the relationship. And he says, alayhi salatu wasalam, وَلَا تَأْذَنْ فِي بَيْتِهِ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. That's also part of Islam. Whether people they like it or not, they're convinced or not, that's in Bukhari and Muslim. That's a well-established hukm in Islam, that she should not allow anyone to enter the house except with his permission. Again, if she knows that sometimes it's idhnun am, it's a general what? Permission. He doesn't mind, he's very open. that she can invite her friends whenever she wants. No problem. But if the husband, he says, no, I don't want too many people, inside the house, or I want to make sure who's coming in my house and everything, then it's his right to be obeyed in that situation. That's the hukm of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. Another example here is that she should not leave the house and go out except with his permission. And لا تخرج من غير إذن, except if there's what? حاجة or ضرورة. Darura, of course, darura is necessity, something urgent. Okay, she has to go to the hospital or something, even if the husband is not there or he said no and it's an emergency, we're not going to tell her, you have to wait for your husband, you have to convince your husband. So the ulama, they mentioned if there's a darura or if there's a haja, there's a real need for her to go out. The ulama, they give the example of the haja, she has to go see some alim, she has to go to the masjid, ask to talk to the imam or something, to ask him a question, fatwa, important about her salat or something. Although nowadays, of course, it's possible to call over the phone and everything, but I'm just giving what the ulama, they say in the books of fiqh, so that we can have cases that can serve as a reference. طيب, another point here that's very controversial nowadays, khidmatul bayt, taking care of the household. Okay, so making food and cleaning the house and everything. There are some people that say, you know what, according to some fuqaha, according to some scholars, it's not the duty of the wife to take care of the house, not part of her duties. They say it's found in the books of fiqh. How do we answer that? Or how do we position ourselves according to that? Number one, the fuqaha, the ulama of fiqh, just like we said before when we were talking this morning about nikah, zawaj, and the conditions and everything, the fuqaha, they don't just make up stuff according to what comes to their mind. They say, okay, let's make man happy this time, so let's make something more for husbands. And some other faqih like, no, let's make the ladies happy, so let's make the hukm a bit different. That's not, they don't follow their hawa, or they're not there to please people. They have very strict principles of usul fiqh, and they follow those. If there's a hadith, and the hadith for him is sahih, authentic, and that's what he understood from the hadith, he's going to say this is the hukm of Allah. Whether it's going to be more for ladies, they're going to like it, or it's going to be more men who are going to like it. Or maybe he's going to say, no, this, because the hadith is da'if, is weak, or that's not what I understand from this hadith. So it's a matter of ijtihad, it's not a matter of how beautiful the result is at the end. So yes, the truth is, there are ulama, there are fuqaha, who say that a wife does not have the duty to take care of her house. You can find this in the books of fiqh. Number one, this is not a unanimous opinion. Number one, it's not an ijma', so it's not like something we have to follow. Number two, the adillah, the proofs, seem to say the opposite. Like we have the famous hadith of Ali and Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, where she asked for a khadim and everything, and it was obvious from the many ahadith that the wives of the Sahaba, they were working, they were doing work for their household, they were cooking, and number three, also, it is the culture, the urf of the Muslimin over the centuries that it has been like this most of the time, that women, they take care of the household inside, they are in charge of it. Number four, okay, you want to go with that opinion, as we said this morning, we could not do talfiq, cut and paste, make my own madhab, like something new. You will find that the same fuqaha, the same scholars who said a wife does not have to take care of the household, khidmatul zawj wa khidmatul bayt, they will say also what? Husband does not have to spend on tadawi, on curing his wife. Meaning if she is ill, according to those same scholars, that's one opinion, it's not his responsibility to pay for her doctor, for her surgery, for her medication. They say his obligation is to pay for her food, shelter, clothes. Okay? So you see here that when we take the fiqh, we take it what? Comprehensive. We don't play with the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, pick something here and reject something here. Yes, of course, there are situations in which now that's where we can probably apply that ruling. In some situations, if it's the urf of the society, like nowadays in many of the Gulf countries, okay, it's normal to have a servant at home, to have a khadim. So the wife, she can tell her husband, I am, all the women from my urf, my standard, all the women like me, they don't do much at home. Their husband, they got them what? Khadim, servant, there's a servant. Then yes, in those situations, what? We say, he has to spend on her according to the urf. He should get her what? A servant, a khadim. But here, how many people in this society here, that they have a servant at home? How much does it cost you, right? It's not something affordable. It's only the super wealthy people that have somebody at home that's a servant that cleans, and they can hire somebody to do the work. So who's going to do the work then? It's either the husband or the wife. Otherwise the house will be a mess, right or wrong? Who's going to take care of the house? That being said, as we said before, it doesn't mean that, every time the man, he needs something, bring it to me. That's not what it means. Bil ma'ruf. That's why in the authentic hadith that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his house alayhi salatu wasalam yakunu fi mihnati ahlihi alayhi salatu wasalam, he used to do his own things even at home alayhi salatu wasalam. He used to take care of that was from the tawadu, the modesty of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He would take care of his own clothes, of his own sandals alayhi salatu wasalam, shiraku na'lihi, right? So, but it doesn't mean that ummahatul mu'mineen, the mothers of the believers, they would just sit down and let Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam do everything and say, I don't have the obligation. That was never the case. But yes, a real man, a real husband who loves his wife, he respects his wife, he knows that wife cannot do everything. So he's going to take care of some things, he's going to help her in the duties of the house. There's a difference between somebody assuming a role as a main responsibility and between somebody who is what? Helping, supporting. So you have the duty to spend on the household. But your wife, she's wealthy, mashallah. So sometimes she offers to support you. I know this month your business is not going really well. Let me pay for the grocery this time, okay? She's supporting you. This is a support role. She's not doing this as a duty. Same thing. Husband says, I know my wife, she's very tired this week. Let me help her in the house. I'll order food from outside, or I'll clean the house, for example. This is support role. You see, you understand? There's a difference here. But you don't come and you break completely the natural system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, and then you reverse the roles to the point like nowadays where you reverse the roles, where you have some men, they stay at home, they clean the house, they cook, and the wife, she goes and she works and she provides for the room. That's really weird. It's like nothing to do with the asl, with how Allah Azza wa Jal has created this world, and how even the deen of Islam and the ahkam of Allah Azza wa Jal, they work. And also the ulama, they say it is part also of the duties and the responsibilities of the wife, ihsan al-tasarrufi, to be reasonable, to take good care of the wealth of her husband. So the husband has things at home. He buys grocery, he has tools, he leaves money and everything. So she should not abuse of it. Oh, this is like free. Let me give this for free, and come take grocery. We have a lot of grocery. She can do this, but in a reasonable way. That she has a responsibility to take care of the goods of her husband and whatever they have at home. Now let's talk about some shared rights. That there are some rights that are both the right of the husband and the right of the wife in the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are mutual responsibilities. First of all, we have husnul ishra. What is ishra? Ishra is mukhalata, how you treat the other person. In Islam, both parties, the husband and the wife, are expected to treat the other person with respect and with dignity. As Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَعَاشِرُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. What is عَاشِرُوهُنَّ? Ishra here is how you treat your wife. Treat your wife bil-ma'ruf, in a respectable way. And also Allah Azza wa Jal says in the other ayah, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِمْنَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. Allah Azza wa Jal says they have rights, meaning the women, they have rights that are like their obligations. So it's take and give. So she has rights. And also the husband also has rights. So she has the right to be treated with respect. He has the right to be treated with respect. And overall, of course, every Muslim has the obligation to treat his other Muslimin brothers and sisters with respect. But there's more emphasis on this because, again, you see this person on a daily basis. There's not someone you meet at the masjid, like brother, you meet at the masjid 15 hours and then you leave, you treat him with respect. No, this is someone you're living with all the time, So the ishra here is extremely important. إحسان العشرة كما أمر الله سبحانه وتعالى. So the ulama, they say here, what some of the words you will find in the books of fiqh. They say المعروف ما يقره الشرع والعرف من الصحبة والقيام بالحق وكف الأذى. They say معروف, treating your wife with ma'ruf and she treats you with ma'ruf. It means good behavior, good values that can be found in shara, in legislation, sharia, and also in the culture, in the environment. So some words you say. So let's say someone says a word to his wife, or she tells him a word, and the other person gets very offended. You've been disrespectful toward me. So how do we know? He said, no, I'm not being disrespectful towards you. Some people, they are overly sensitive. Some people, like this, they have su'ul dhan, they make calculations and they try to imagine, build stories why they. So here it goes back to the urf. The urf meaning, what's the culture, especially here we're talking about the urf of the believers, okay? Like always the urf is the urf of the Muslimin. So in the urf of the Muslimin, are these words okay? And of course before this, are these words against the shara? Anything against the shara, of course, is haram. We agree on this. But on top, after the shara, we have also the urf. Are these words like, would you tell this to any other Muslim, random Muslim, average Muslim, and they will take it normal as a good thing? That's what we call here al-ma'ruf min as-suhba, companionship, being a good companion, like he was alayhi salatu wasalam to his wives, wal-qiyam bil-haqq, and fulfilling the obligations, and also kaffu al-adha, not hurting the other person unnecessarily. And also they said here, يجب على كل أحد منهما. Please listen to this. This is a very important point. Okay, this I'm taking it from the book here, التسهيل in the fiqh. So they say يجب على كل واحد منهما أداء حق الآخر مع قدرته بلا مماطلة ولا كره لأدائه بل يؤديه ببشر وطلاقة. Every one of both parties has to fulfill his duties toward the other person. They see here, as long as you are able, مع القدرة, first of all, بلا مماطلة, without مماطلة. Does anyone know the word مماطلة? Barakallahu, delay. So like hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, مطل الغني ظلم, مطل الغني. So if I owe you money, or if, for example, if you have to reimburse someone, if you have to pay someone, you have to give him his salary. Someone is your employee, and it's been a month you did not pay him his salary, and you have money, but you're just taking it very lightly, like, yeah, I'll pay him after, it's not my priority right now. This is dhulm, he said, alayhi salatu. We call this what? Mumatala. You're willingly delaying something. So in marriage, none of the two has the right to what? Delay the rights of the others. She says, it's very cold, I don't have a winter jacket. Yeah, I'll buy you a winter jacket when I have time. We'll look into this. 1 week, 2 weeks. She reminds her husband, I don't have a winter jacket. It's very cold. That I have very thin jackets. Yeah, I'll do it. Don't worry, I'll do it. This is dhulm. This is haram. This is mumatala. Because he can fulfill his obligation. He has the money, but he's just not taking it seriously. Or the same thing here, they say, وَلَا كُرْهٍ لِأَدَائِهِ. And you should not display that you don't feel like doing this. Buying you a coat, this is a lot of money. I have to spend again, I have to buy you again another coat. How is she going to feel? How is she going to feel? It's insulting, right? It's like, don't ask me again for your rights. Or he says, I'm hungry. Are we eating today, or do we have any food? Okay, I'll make food. You want food? I'll make you food. Here's the food. Eat. How is he going to feel? Okay? So that's not husnul ishra. That's not عاشروهن بالمعروف. That's not ولهن مثل الذي عليهن بالمعروف. And the ulama, they say this is haram when it comes to the obligations, to the duties. Person can do it easily, But what they're like, why are you living together then? Like which type of relationship is this? If you don't feel like, doing, because normally, by default, marriage should be based on, or ideally, not should be, ideally, marriage would be based on love. Hub. When you love someone, what do? You do something out of love. If there's no love, like Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, he said, لَيْسَ كُلُّ الْبُيُوتِ بُنِيَتْ عَلَى الْحُبِّ. Not all households are built on love. Our ancestors, our grandparents and everything, in many parts of the world, right, they lived a very simple life, and they were not like into like romance, love, where they loved each other so much, but they respected each other. Everyone knew what his role was, and alhamdulillah, the relationship lasted. So if there's no love, then at least it should be what? Ihsan, liwajhi Allah azza wa jal, for the good purpose, for the children, for the good of the family, for the good of the environment, and so on and so forth. Also, they say here, so this we mentioned it. There are some good practices here, some important principles. These are general principles, not just for marriage, but please listen to this because this is important. This also causes a lot of problems, unfortunately, and destroys a lot of marriages. Number one, protecting kitmanul asrar, protecting the secrets of the household. Okay, so that's very important here. It's haram in Islam to display secrets in general. If I come to you and I say, Akhi, I have to tell you a secret, something personal, just between me and you, and then you go tell other people, that's haram. And it becomes more serious in situations of marriage. So the husband and the wife, both of them, none of them should go out and tell people what is going on inside their house, unless there's really a need for help. Okay, that's different. You go to the qadi, you go to the mufti, that's different. Or you go to someone, she goes to talk to her father because she's having some really serious problems with her husband. Like he's really zalim, he's not spending on her, he's not buying food. That's a different situation. But did you ever hear about a household, a marriage with no problems, with no disagreements? Does it exist? Doesn't exist in the whole world. Never existed in history. That there's what? Married, zawaj, husband and wife. They don't have disagreements, they don't have issues, they don't have problems. Everywhere, it's a normal thing, right? However, if for any small thing, he picks up the phone, he calls his mom. Yeah, my wife, actually, today she made no food. She left us with no food. Or she picks up the phone and calls her mother, right? This is what he told me. I'm so upset. That's not how things work. This is called al-asrar al-zawjiyah. And this leads us to another point, which is very dangerous here. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ خَبَّبَ امْرَأَةً عَلَى زَوْجِهَا أي مَنْ أَفْسَدَ امْرَأَةً عَلى زَوْجِهَا. He said alayhi salatu wasalam, he is not one of us. He distances himself alayhi salatu wasalam from such a person. Who is this person? The one who corrupts the wife of someone else. Two people, they were happily married, alhamdulillah, and then somebody came to that lady and he found a way to what? Corrupt her. That he corrupted the relationship, or she started looking down at her husband, or she's not very satisfied with her husband anymore because somebody put in her heart what? Through ghiba or some namima or something, that your husband, like, why is he doing this? Why are you accepting this? You should tell him this, you should ask for this. And there are so many of them nowadays. And they destroy so many marriages. These are shayateen, iyadha billah. No, these are what? We call them shayateen, literally. Those who destroy marriages from outside, they are shayateen. Because this is a job of the shayateen. Shayateen, when they do sihr, for example, what did Allah Azza wa Jalla say about them? One of the most common forms of sihr is to do what? يتعلمون منهما ما يفرقون به بين المرء وزوجه. This is Surah Al-Baqarah. They try to separate a man from his wife. And in the authentic hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told that shaitan, that Iblis, he has his headquarters somewhere. It's over the water, over the ocean. Allahu a'lam where, we don't know where. And every day Iblis, he receives his soldiers that come from all around the world with a report. This is what I did. I convinced someone to drink alcohol. Okay, next. I convinced someone to take riba. Next. I convinced someone to commit, I don't know, next. And then someone says, I separated between someone and his wife. They got divorced. He said, this is the hadith of, authentic hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Anta, or in the other narration, ni'ma anta. You're the one. You're like, great job. I'm happy with you. There are shayateen of ins, not only of jinn. There are human beings who are shayateen. They go, there's a relationship, it's working well, alhamdulillah. Sometimes it can be from the family, by the way, from the relatives. Sometimes it can be from the friends, rufaqa'u as-su', the bad friends. And the khalil, the bad good friend, yawm al-qiyamah will become your enemy sometimes, because they, how many, iyada billah azza wa jal, women, they got these advices from their friends. No, your husband he's not good, he's not a good husband. Why did you marry someone like this? And then they keep pushing until they destroy the marriage. And then, it's gone. 20 years after, where are her friends? She lost them. And then she's what? Like, oh, I had a happy life, and now look at what happened to my family. Because of, subhanAllah, and you can't imagine how many of these shayateen are around nowadays. That's why our sisters, very important, they should not open up with their personal secrets. What happens at home stays at home. If there's a serious problem, that's different. But when there's a serious problem, we go consult people of wisdom, people of ilm, people of knowledge, those who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and who can make a rational and logical and a just, fair assessment of the situation and tell us what to do. I know the Shaykh, mashallah, he has PhD in the Sharia, his Imam and everything, somewhere else in a different city. And he was telling me, his wife also studied Sharia. Okay, so she's like a student of knowledge, and he's like, my wife, she wanted to start this halaqah at the masjid because she has knowledge, mashallah. So she wanted to teach women at the masjid, tafsir and hadith and everything. And she's qualified, mashallah. So she started with a group of women. They made announcement at the masjid. So she gave her halaqah, she gave her class. At the end of the class, the women that were present over there, they don't even know her. That's the thing. It's not like, she's not like their friend or something. They said, you're actually the wife of the Shaykh. Okay. She said, yes. They told her, does he beat you ever? She's like, no. Yeah, because look, if he ever touches you, don't ever accept this. Shaytanat, a'udhu billah. Of course, it was her last halaqah. She never came back to that place. So that's what they do with someone who has knowledge of the shara, who's a teacher, who should be their teacher. So imagine how many shayateen there are around nowadays, because that's the goal of shaitan. Shaitan, ultimately, if you destroy a family, what can you do after? You can control so much of the children after, and of people. There's so many fawahish that can go, if the marriage institution is not working anymore. That's why they want to destroy the marriage system nowadays, the natural one, as Allah Azza wa Jal created it. Because once it's destroyed and everything becomes, questioned, and no, that's not the way we do it, there's other ways to do it, then shaitan will have full control over individuals. Wal-'iyadu billah Azza wa Jal. There will be so much corruption. And also another point here that's important is عدم أذية الأهل. That also is part of the akhlaq and the general duties, but it becomes more important in marriage that don't hurt, don't insult, or don't hurt the other person's family, right? So sometimes he's going to make fun of her father. Do you know who your father is? And your father, he's like this, he's like that. Even if maybe he's like this, but out of respect for your wife, and the other way around, because this is going to ruin the family relationship, the normal relationship. Now let's move to situations of conflict. Situations of conflict. Before we get to the conflict here, let me just mention one hadith of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. He said alayhi salatu wasalam in the authentic hadith. We spoke before the hadith in which Rasulullah ﷺ spoke to men about the importance of treating their wives very well. Now we have also on the other hand, what did he say ﷺ? Always, like we said before, we don't bring one portion of the deen and we ignore the other portion. We bring everything. That's what Rasulullah ﷺ said about how to treat your women very good, and that's how he said also how to treat your men very good, your husband very good. Both are in the teachings of Islam. He says ﷺ, as the authentic hadith narrated by Ibn Hibban, إِذَا صَلَّتِ الْمَرْأَةُ خَمْسَهَا وصامت شهرها وحصنت فرجها وأطاعت زوجها. If a woman, she prays her five salawat, and she fasts her month, meaning Ramadan, and she protects her chastity, she stays away from zina, and she obeys her husband, قِيلَ لَهَا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, on the day of judgment she will be told, enter Jannah from any gate you want. You pick from wherever you want to enter Jannah. So it's a simple mission. It's a simple thing. See here, women, they don't have to go and as we said before, protect the family, protect the Muslim land against the invaders and give their lives and everything. This is authentic hadith of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, what if there are problems? Okay, there are serious problems and marriage is not working anymore and cannot work anymore. In Islam, it's not eternal relationship. There is a door out. The marriage can be ended. It's not something that is encouraged to do, that one should be in a hurry. First problem, let's break the marriage. Because we just said before, that's what Shaitan wants. Shaitan wants marriages to fail. Because if it fails once, twice, 3 times, people, they will say what? Why get married? Just do haram instead, it's much easier, right? Shaytanu ya'idukumul faqra wa ya'muru bil fahsha. Shaitan wants to encourage fahsha to the point that many youth nowadays, they don't want to get married. This is too many problems. That's why they made, see all the laws and the rules and the culture, they made it in a way to make people hate marriage. Like, oh, marriage is like entering jail, it's gonna be full of problems. So people in the end, if it continues like this, you're going to end up with a generation that's going to say, I'm fully against marriage. I'd rather, have temporary boyfriend or girlfriend, and then I can switch whenever I want, I can just leave whenever I want. Iyadha billahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, in Islam, we have many gates out of marriage. It depends on the situation. The first one, what is it? Talaq. Okay? So, divorce. Very important here. Unfortunately, I wish we had more husbands here present with us so that they can know the ahkam before again doing big damage and creating chaos and then asking some imam to bring them some magical solution. But it's important to know the ahkam of talaq, because at-talaq in Islam, divorce is in the hand of who? Who makes divorce? It's the husband. هو الذي يطلق. Okay? If someone says, if Muslim, we're talking about Muslimin here. If someone Muslim says she divorced her husband, then I don't think you know what Islam is about. In Islam, a wife does not divorce her husband. She has another way out of the marriage called al-khulu'. We'll talk about khulu' in a moment, inshallah. But divorce, talaq, it's the husband who divorces his wife. Okay? So that's the first way. It's talaq. The husband, if he tells his wife, anti talaq, you are divorced, then that will count as a divorce. Will it end the relationship right away? No. The first time, no. Now please listen to this, and if you have any questions, inshallah, you can ask bi'idhnillah azza wa jal. And just before I explain how the system of marriage works in Islam, how the system of divorce works in Islam, first of all, the ulama, they said divorce can take the ahkam al-khamsa. So sometimes it's mubah, it's licit, sometimes it's wajib, obligation, sometimes it's haram, okay, prohibited, sometimes it's recommended, sometimes it's discouraged. So for example, in some situations, divorce is haram. What would be a case of divorce is haram? Sorry?
The wife is pregnant.
He can divorce his wife when she's pregnant, so it's possible to do it. But divorce would be haram إذا قصد بذلك الإضرار بالزوجة. What he says, this wife, I hate her so much, let me punish her. So I'm going to divorce her. This way, she's going to be a divorcee. People that go, what? Nobody will want to marry her. So he has no maslaha except what? Except something inside his heart. لا ضرر ولا ضرار in Islam. So that would be haram with this intention. عياذا بالله عز وجل. It can be عفوا.
Does it count?
نعم, it counts. It counts. نعم, it counts because like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, by the way, at-talaq, it counts even in situations of al-hazal. Even if somebody is just what? It's a joke. He tells his wife, I divorce you, and then he's like, he gets so scared, like, I was just joking. No, it actually counts. That was a divorce, even if you were joking. So it's not, there's no joke about divorce in Islam. It's a very serious thing. That's why it should be what? A rational decision, not an emotional decision. For most people, especially those who make big mistakes like this, they take it as what? It's just a reaction. He was fighting with his wife, like, you're divorced. You will see now that Islam, that's not how Islam presents the system. It should be what? A well thought of decision. Like, you really want to finish this relationship, you thought about it, make istikhara, whatever, then go ahead and divorce your wife. That's how it should be done. If it's not done like that, it doesn't mean it doesn't count. It counts. If it's a divorce, it counts. Inshallah Azza wa Jalla will explain. The ulama, they say divorce can be makruh, discouraged, where, for example, they give the situation in the case where, you know, he likes his wife, everything is going smooth, mashallah, relationship is going really well, but then he says, maybe I can find better. I divorce you, anti-talaq. So the ulama, they say what? Makruh, actually in the madhab of Imam Abu Hanifa, they say it's haram in this situation. Because why would you do takhrib? Why would you corrupt the family when everything is just going, you know, she loves him, he loves her, no problems, no major problems. But he says, maybe there are better wives. Let me try. Okay, so this is makruh, and according to some ulama, like Shaykh, like Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, that this is haram in this case. Now, no divorce for someone who's being forced. Okay, so you have to be mukhtar. إذا كان مكرها, if someone, this can happen in some situations. Okay, if someone, it has happened through history. If someone is forced to divorce his wife, so there's somebody very powerful, a king, and he hears about someone who married a woman. He says, why did he marry that one? I should be the one who, or she should be for my son. And then he threatens that man. You better divorce your wife. Doesn't count anyway, even if he divorces her, because it's under threat. Okay, تحت الإكراه, it does not count as a divorce. So divorce has to be what? The person has to say it. Nobody forced you to say it. Nobody threatened you and forced you to say it. Now, by default we have الطلاق مرتان فإمساك بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان. Allah Azza wa Jal says that there are two divorces, and then after the third one, it's either you keep or you release for good. And when you release with ihsan. So even divorce in Islam, by the way, unfortunately nowadays divorce is looked down upon, which is a very odd thing. That's why nowadays it has become such a serious problem. In the time of the Salaf and the Sahaba and everything, a woman can be divorced, and you know she's gonna get married right after her iddah, normal. Nowadays, if there's a divorce, you know she's gonna have very bad connotation. She was divorced, and it will be very hard for her to find a husband. So divorce does not mean failure of the person or the person is not a good person. It just means what? The relationship, for a reason or another, it did not work out. Now, as we said before, divorce in Islam, and that's very important, please listen to this. Divorce in Islam doesn't mean you have to make it, doesn't mean it has to end as a war, you know, like it's the world war, it's a nuclear war, it's divorce. No, Allah Azza wa Jal clearly said in the Quran, imsakun bima'ruf, either you keep the relationship, you keep your wife with ma'ruf, as we said before, with good relationship, with respect, or tasrih, or you release your wife, you release the relationship. And even in tasrih, how do you do it? With ihsan. Not, now we are divorced, let's rush, let's get the best lawyers, let's get the best lies, let's do propaganda, let's damage the other person's reputation, right? Let's hate on them. We have to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah Azza wa Jal raqibun alayna. That's why Allah Azza wa Jal, even in situations of divorce, He said subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. Do not forget the fadl, like the good times between both of you. Most of the times, even if it ends with divorce, they had good times before, they had good experiences. Both of them, they did good to each other. وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. So, how does it work, divorce in Islam? If a husband divorces his wife for the first time, so one day he tells his wife, أنت طالق. This relationship is not working at all. أنت طالق. You are divorced. What happens here? The wife does not leave him automatically right away. She is still partially linked to him. She is still his wife. Believe it or not. Because now she has to go through the period known as the iddah, the waiting period. The waiting period will give other figures inshaAllah Azza wa Jal, but for the wife who is divorced, by default the waiting period is ثلاثة قروء والمطلقات يتربصن بأنفسهن ثلاثة قروء. ثلاثة قروء means 3 hayd, 3 periods of hayd. So he divorced her today, and then in a few days she's going to have hayd, so that's number 1, and then طهر, and then another hayd, number 2, and then طهر, and then 3rd hayd. Now she's what? أجنبية عنه. Now she's not his wife anymore. Meaning they cannot live together. She has to wear. She's like any other stranger woman outside. No relationship. But during the iddah period, she is still what? His wife. She doesn't have like to wear hijab and cover herself and say I'm ajnabiyya to you and this is khalwa and it's haram. No, it's still your wife. To the point that Allah Azza wa Jalla, many people do not know this hukm. Look how much jahl we have of the ahkam of Allah Azza wa Jalla. It's unbelievable. It's a disaster. Even what's mentioned in the Quran very clearly, like very simple to understand. And people do not implement it. Iyadha billah Azza wa Jalla. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the mutallaqa, the woman who was divorced, لا تخرجوهن من بيوتهن ولا يخرجن إلا أن يأتين بفاحشة مبينة. Do not ask them to leave the house. He cannot tell his wife, أنت طالق, take your luggage and leave. He doesn't have the right. Allah says, do not ask her to leave her house. بيو لا تخرج لا تخرجوهن من بيوتهن. It's still her house. That's her house. You cannot tell her leave, go to your parents' house. You can't. It's still her house. And also she does not have the right to leave. He divorced me, taking my luggage, bye. Bangs the door. That's not Islam. That's hukmul jahiliyyah. Let's be very clear. Until what? Her iddah is over. When the iddah is over, then finished. Then it's really finished. But before the iddah, she doesn't get to leave the house, or he doesn't tell her to leave the house, unless there's one exception Allah mentions here very clearly. إِلَّا أَن يَأْتِينَ بِفَاحِشَةٍ مُبَيِّنَةٍ. Unless there's a clear fahisha. Some ulama of tafsir here, they say clear fahisha is if she commits zina, iyadha billah azza wa jal. And there are other interpretations for this ayah, but I'm not going to mention all of them because those are specific situations, very how can I say, very rare situations. And that's why in those times, by the way, whatever we explain here about talaq, don't make your own fatwa. Don't make fatwa for someone. If talaq happens, always situations of talaq, always go and meet someone who's knowledgeable and explain the situation in details. Because talaq is not something, like some people they do. He receives like a letter like this, a question on paper or on the internet, on YouTube. Okay, there's a sister asking about her talaq. Yeah, you're divorced. Okay, no. Talaq is, by default, is a matter of qada. Like in the time of the Salaf, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, even the big fuqaha, the big scholars, they will not tell someone, you're taliq or you're no. They are fuqaha, they give the ahkam of Allah Azza wa Jal, but the practical thing, they leave it to people who are less knowledgeable than them, but they are qudat, they are rulers, courts, because these are situations that are very tricky. If you make a mistake, or if you did not hear the other side what they said, or maybe people, they will make su'ud dhan about you, right? They will say, that Shaykh, he's the one who told my wife that she can leave me. He destroyed my family. Okay, so by default, situations of divorce, go meet someone with knowledge, with ilm, and describe the situation, answer their questions, and then they will, inshaAllah subhanahu wa ta'ala, answer you bi'idnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, as we said, she doesn't get to leave the house. She's still his wife during the period of al-iddah, the waiting period of al-iddah. Now, there are 2 cases. Either the iddah will expire, nothing happened, finished. She leaves. She's not his wife anymore. What if he regrets the situation after 6 months? What happens? Oh, she was such a good wife and I divorced her. What happens?
This is it. You cannot marry.
He can marry her, but you have to start the process from the beginning. Go knock at the door, talk to her father, her guardian, say, I want to marry your daughter, then you agree on the mahr again, right? And you do the aqd. So all over again. Maybe her father will say, no, I don't want you. Although Allah Azza wa Jal says here in the Quran, فَلَا تَعْضُلُوهُنَّ أَن يَنْكِحْنَ أَزْوَاجَهُنَّ إِذَا تَرَاضَوْا بَيْنَهُمْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. In these situations, after iddah, if the ex-husband comes back and he wants to remarry his ex-wife, then if she loves him, her too, she regrets, then Allah Azza wa Jal tells what the guardian not to refuse. He should accept. Because huwa awla biha. He's the one, that he's more deserving and she's more deserving of him. It's better than they go and they try someone else, right? So that's number one. Or the other case is what? We call it الرجعة. يراجعها. يراجعها means he takes her back during the waiting period. Before the waiting period, what? Expires. So he divorced his wife, and then she's still with him at home. And then there's one hayd, two hayd, and then right before the third hayd, he says, I regret my decision. And he says, what? I take you back. You're my wife. أراجعها. Then what? She becomes his wife. No more waiting period. Waiting period is cancelled. We forget about the waiting period. Relationship goes back to normal. And the ulama, they say, al-jima' intimacy will count as a raj'a by itself, even if he doesn't say anything. If there's intimacy, this will count as a raj'a. Now what happens if 6 months after, big problems again, and he divorces her? What happens? We redo the same thing, same story. Either the thing will expire, the iddah, and she will leave the house, it's finished, bye, or he will take her back, raja. If he takes her back, and then few months after, problems again, he divorces his wife for the third time. So we said one, he divorced her once, took her back, divorced her second time, took her back. Third time, if he divorces her, we call this what? Al-Baynuna. Here, Baynuna, that he cannot take her again. Then on the third one, by the way, she leaves the house right away. Because on the moment the third divorce is pronounced, she's not his wife completely. So then she leaves the house. And he cannot take her back. He cannot marry her ever, except if there's another man who comes and marry that woman and then divorces her, then he can go back and propose to her again, and that with one condition. What is the condition? It's not made up, barakallahu fiqh. So if he or she, so she says, I know my ex-husband, he divorced me 3 times, but I'm sure he's really interested in me right now, but he cannot marry me again, okay? So she goes to some man and she says, can you just marry me and then divorce me so that, or him, he's gonna say, can you go marry my ex-wife and then divorce her so that I can marry again? That's haram, nikah al-muhallil, iyadan billah, taysh al-musta'ar, as Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he called it. But for one, it's haram, and for two, it's not gonna fix. You still don't have the right to marry her, because it was not a real marriage, it was just like made up, it was fake for a purpose. So it has to be it has to be someone who married your ex-wife that you divorced her 3 times. Someone has married her for himself because he wanted to marry her, and then it didn't work out, he divorced her. That's when you can come and propose again to her. If she wants to accept you, then you get married again. Okay? Now there's another point here. You see how Allah Azza wa Jal made divorce here? It's a system. It's not like just come and divorce, do whatever you want, somebody says. So 3 divorces. And some people, what they do, they when they are very upset, they say, Anti taliq. You are divorced. Like, I'm not wasting time waiting for 3 times, like right now. And some of them, they say, Anti taliqun thalath. You are divorced 3 times. Like, put 3 credits in one package right away. So this is haram. Okay, this is against the sunnah. Talaq al-bid'i. However, the tricky question here is, does it actually count as 1 talaq or as 3? Okay, and I'm not answering this because we should not give answers in general, like basically situations like this. If anything happens, go see someone of knowledge and they will give you the fatwa, inshallah. But we have to understand, we don't do this. We don't say you're taliq, 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 taliq. Like we mentioned this last time in the khutbah, when a man came to Ibn Abbas, Sahabi radiallahu anhuma, and he said, I divorced my wife 100 times. I told her, you're divorced 100 times. He said, ثلاث طلقت منك. The three first ones, she's divorced from you. وسبع وتسعون اتخذت بهن آيات الله هزوا. 97 of them, you were mocking the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. You're making fun of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Azza wa Jal makes a system for a reason. It's very clear in the Quran. And you come and you do it your own way. So what are you doing? Right? You're mocking the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's number one. When somebody divorces his wife, it's one divorce. Just a normal, anti-taliq, finished. Even if he's upset, just one. Number two, very important, people do not know this. There is a time, you have a limited time when you can divorce your wife. You cannot divorce your wife in a situation of hayd, when she is during her period, her hayd. That's haram. Talaq bid'i. And also you cannot divorce your wife in situation of in the period of tahr. So tahr is when she's not on her periods. We have, yes, akhi. ممكن تعيد لأن أسمع جيدا. نعم نعم صحيح. كما قلنا يعني هذه المسألة فيها خلاف كبير بين العلماء، وهي من أخطر مسائل الطلاق. الذي طلق زوجته ثلاثا في جلسة واحدة، هل تعتبر طلقة واحدة أم ثلاث طلقات؟ لكن كما قلنا نحن لن نجيب عن هذه المسألة، لأن هذه مسائل ماذا؟ خطيرة، تتعلق بالأرحام والأبضاع وكذا، فلا يتلاعب بها. فالإنسان إذا احتاج